Season 2. Yes, it's apparently time to go back in the woods and meet up with our old buds, Elliot and Boog, because they seem to have many more adventures to show us. And believe me when I say many, many, many more! But in all seriousness, the case of Open Season is all one big strange mystery. It's hard to explain how we ended up in a situation where Sony decided to make 3 whole direct-to-DVD sequels dedicated to Open Season out of all things. I mean, the film wasn't even a hit. Why make more? Then again, it's not uncommon for Sony Animation to make a sequel that has no legitimate purpose for existing. But back onto Open Season, I remember seeing the first film and it was weird. Not like Yellow Submarine weird where it's cool and trippy, but more like, what the fridge did I just watch weird. I'll give it that it can have a few good things like some of the animation, especially for the company's debut, but other than that, it just felt completely clueless with no sense of direction and left me feeling confused and kind of uncomfortable. But now that this season has gone to the dogs, did Elliot and Boog make the forest feel more welcoming since we last saw them? Or will watching this sink us deeper into the rabbit hole of this convoluted franchise? Let's find out. The story. In the second installment of Open Season, the film takes an important look at one of the franchise's most vital characters. You'd think that would be either Boog or Elliot, right? Well, you're wrong, because this movie is all about Mr. Weenie. Yeah, remember that dog that barely did much throughout the first film until the end when he decided to quit his owners to join the animals' army? Apparently, he needed a moment in the spotlight, so why not have the story revolve around him? Set 1 year after the event of the first film, Mr. Weenie ended up back in the hands of his owners, and it's up to his forest friends to go and save him. But while the gang is on the mission, a group of domestic dogs and cats try to convert Weenie back to his pet instincts, with the leader of the group holding a raging hatred for wild animals. Think of it as a reverse Secret Life of Pets in a sense, except this was released 8 years before that film and most likely has an eighth of the budget. In terms of the plot, it's as straightforward as it gets. It's not interested in adding any unique twist to make the journey somewhat interesting. It mostly just tells the simple and predictable rescue mission. In fact, the reason it does so is because the movie cares a lot more on delivering the comedy than to tell a compelling story. Okay, so that means the humor is what would drive this movie in order to have the viewers engaged to this, right? Well, yes. That is, if the movie was actually funny. For the most part, the jokes mostly consist of slapstick and typical humor you'd find in cartoons that end up as a dud. But I will confess that it's not the case with the entirety of the comedy. There were a few moments that did give me a chuckle. So while this is generally an unfunny movie, I would lie if I said that I didn't laugh at anything during the film.
No one will notice. No one will notice.
Okay.
No one will notice.
Okay, I hear
He
you.
noticed.
Okay.
He noticed.
Hey,
I
kitty,
noticed.
Fifi.
You noticed.
I heard
we
you.
all noticed.
I got it.
I noticed.
However, not everything is about the Weenie rescue mission. The film also has a prominent side plot about Elliot as he contemplates about having a long-term commitment with his fiancée Giselle. While I do appreciate it trying to spice up the plot to give it something more than just finding the dog, it doesn't work because it requires the people watching this to care about Elliot. I'll get more on that later, but the short answer for now is no. He's too stupid and self-centered for anyone to care what happens to him. When a movie barely offers a story, unique features, or even gags that can be entertaining, is there even a point to watching it? The animation. Okay, before I get into this, I just want to clarify that I do understand that there are some legitimate explanations about the quality setbacks. As it is a direct-to-DVD film, Sony gave a much smaller budget to this than they did with the first Open Season, and this was only released 2 years after the original. So not only were the filmmakers given little money, but they were also on a very limited time crunch, only capable of doing what they can in order to have the film be out in the market as soon as possible. So, with that said, wow. I mean, wow! Is this even finished? I'm not saying it's at that level, but this is honestly close to looking like a Nintendo 64 game. Even if it has a downgrade, there are some elements that do share the same look as the first, both good and bad. On one hand, the characters still have their weird, lengthy style whose cartoony nature feels more disturbing than charming, which now makes it even worse with the textures that look either artificial or non-existent. On the other hand, the painted-like backgrounds have returned to give some nice woodland scenery reminiscent of cartoons like Yogi Bear or Camp Lazlo.
The forest in spring. A time of renewal.
As for the new components of the animation, the best way to describe it is that due to its severely low budget, it presents a lot of what I'd refer to as visual cringe. As much as it wants to try to be more eccentric and lively, the character animation feels a lot more rigid, which is why many of the slapstick humor doesn't work here. And if that's bad enough, the effects are almost a joke. There are some that look like they were taken from a green screen video, and whatever liquid is featured here, like water, always look like it's some kind of unnatural slime. And then you have the other background elements that are not far from distance. In the woods, like the trees and the roads across it, they look like they didn't finish rendering and had to be painted on to look like it has any form of textures, and the only new place the characters go to is Pet Paradiso, which is like a luxury water park for pets. It's got some ideas, I'll give it that, but obviously doesn't have the resources to make the most out of it. I get some would pass this off as just direct-to-video quality, but even at that, or even compared to what's done on television, the animation standards here are uncommonly low. The characters. If there's one thing I was the least excited about returning to open season, it's being stuck again with these characters. Even if it's been a year after the first film, not much has changed with these guys, nor do they expand themselves to make them more fleshed out. This is especially the case with Elliot. Like last time, he's the main comedic goofball whose comedy relies on his own moronic selfishness. He's not just a bad character. He's the kind of character that the film is most likely better without, but instead, it's making itself worse where it's demanding its viewers to root for him, that this is who we're supposed to support. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not gonna sit here and cheer for the idiotic prick just because the movie told me to. As for the other woodland creatures, they've now become just one-note characters, like Boog is the leader of the pack, McSquizzy is the angry Scottish squirrel, Serge and Denny are the French flyers, Buddy is, well, a porcupine, and Giselle, Elliot's fiancée. The more I think about her, the more I realize she is as problematic as Elliot is. Allow me to explain. She's supposed to be the brains of this relationship, right? Well, if that's the case, how come she didn't understand what was going on with him at all? Like, she knew something was wrong, but somehow incapable of wondering why. At the beginning of the film, it sets up that Elliot has these giant antlers that he is very emotionally attached to. And then when she first sees him on their wedding day when the big antlers are broken off a few minutes ago, she's just standing there confused onto why he's not saying I do. I mean, they've been together for like a year and she knew him for many more. She should have picked up on what's troubling him and throwing off his groove when it's right in front of her face. But I guess she's too preoccupied with making the marriage happen. So, in the end, these two are definitely made for each other for their selfishness and stupidity. Sorry if I went off on a little tangent there, but this kind of idiocy is not fun to deal with. Anyways, back onto the characters. The new ones are the pets, which I will admit are possibly the best additions to this movie. Each pet has their own unique personality and are led by Fifi, a very pampered poodle fueled by his own anger against the wild. Sure, he's not a great character, but compared to everything else here, at least he's the most entertaining aspect.
The humans can't hear you from here. And the house pets, well, they hate wilds just as much as I do!
And then there's Mr. Weenie, whom in this film is pretty much like Boog in the first film, where he's taken out of his comfortable environment and has to ultimately determine if he's meant for the wild or if he's better off domesticated. While some did help try to get some fun out of this, the characters end up causing more problems than actually doing this movie any kind of service. The first film left me wondering, what did I just watch? The second film made me sure about what I just saw, and what I saw was pretty bad. Open Season 2 is a poorly crafted mess whose quality can be considered quite low, even by direct-to-video standards. The story offers very little, the characters get annoying, the humor is mostly unfunny, and the animation can almost be considered unfinished. It's really hard to consider who to recommend this for. I mean, I don't think even kids can maintain their attention watching this. At the most, I would say this is for die-hard Open Season fans, if there's any. Like, the kind who has a blind loyalty to the franchise and love the antics of Boog and Elliot. Other than that, I recommend to step away from this one. It is not worth your time. Even if it is only like an hour and 10 minutes, it can feel like it's twice as long. Did anyone ask for an Open Season sequel? Well, judging by how this was completely rushed without any care on the quality, I don't think so. And that's the kind of film that rightfully gets the AniMat's seal of garbage. Hey guys, this is AniMat, and before I continue talking about Open Season 2, I just would like to have a shout out to Ryan Walterson and give him a very special thanks for his amazing support on Patreon, which allowed him to get a lot of amazing rewards, including this one, in which he can ask me to go and review Open Season 2. And like I said before, not everything about it is absolutely terrible, and there were a few instances that I did get a little bit of enjoyment out of it. And I'll be very honest, the only ones that I did find kind of funny, or that I did find myself actually laughing at their gags, is actually the angry Scottish squirrel. I already forgot his name, that's how forgettable Open Season is. But yeah, the angry Scottish squirrel and Fifi. Those are the two characters that their comedic style is a little bit more different than most of the others, since all the other characters are more focused on the cartoony slapstick style of comedy, which obviously it doesn't work in here, especially with a very low budget. But in the case of the squirrel and Fifi, they're actually pretty funny in the way that it's more their comedic performance from the actors, because they were actually the ones that did deliver out a pretty solid performance. Now, keep in mind that not all the original actors did come back, and sometimes it can be pretty obvious, like, I forgot the big deer's name, but the one that is voiced by Patrick Warburton. Surprisingly enough, Patrick did not return to reprise his role in Open Season 2, and instead we ended up with a replacement that it is honestly very obvious that it is not him, and it is just some guy trying to do an imitation of Patrick Warburton. If you don't believe me, just take a listen.
Just want to inform you that this ceremony begins at 0800 hours.
Good to know.
If it all goes according to plan, and it will, we'll finish up at 0900 hours with a berry and dewdrop reception brunch to follow.
Yikes, man! I mean, you can pretty much tell. And I mean, like, this is not to bash the actor or anything like that, but, you know, it is kind of sad to easily notice whenever the original actor is not there, and then he has to be replaced by someone else who has to do the best they can in order to impersonate who was originally voiced before. So really, that's more at fault on the movie more so than the actor. In fact, I'll just say that the actor who did do that voice, like, he did do the best he can, so I'm not putting him at fault whatsoever. He's just doing his job.
But yeah, honestly, those two characters, the Squirrel and Fifi, those are actually pretty funny because of the comedic performance by their respective voice actors. But outside of that, yeah, this is just an absolute train wreck where, honestly, I do feel like Sony should have given a little bit more money. I mean, yeah, it's a direct-to-DVD movie, but even they can have some standards. At least try to chip in a little bit if you can. I mean, because honestly, just looking at it, it's just, yeah, overall, like, there's a part of me that just wants to say, yikes. Okay, but with all that said and done, I'm glad it's over. I can move on from this open season. Now we can go and jump onto the next review, which is going to be a Patreon request brought to us by Peyton Michael. So I just want to say right now, if you guys would like to be like Ryan and Peyton, and you guys would like to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards at the same time, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you guys would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is just write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, the question remains, what is it that Peyton asked me to go and review? Well, honestly, in the case of franchises in general, we're going a little bit of the opposite. Where in the case of open season, I started out with reviewing the first one, and then I have the rest of the sequels that are still left to be reviewed. Not that I want to review them, please God, don't ask me to review these movies, please. But yeah, there are still, like, the only thing I have left with open season are just the sequels. Whereas the one that Peyton asked me is the complete opposite. I have so far reviewed every single sequel of this movie, and all I have left is the legendary original.
Wow. Did anybody see that coming?
Yes.
Even Roger saw that coming.
I did.